Hello, and welcome to the last session of our 5-part video series on tinnitus management. I'm Dr. Caroline Schmidt.
And I'm Dr. Samantha Boris-Karpel. We're both research psychologists at the VA Connecticut Healthcare System located in West Haven, Connecticut. You can use these videos to learn how to manage your reactions to tinnitus. We want this experience to be interactive, so we'll ask you to pause the video now and again so that you can fill out a worksheet or do some other activity that we'll explain later. So be sure to keep the remote control handy so that you can pause the video when we ask you to. You should watch these video sessions in order. You should have watched videos 1 through 4 prior to watching this session.
Before we get started, we'd like you to gather up a few materials. You'll need a pen or a pencil to write with. You'll also need the workbook titled How to Manage Your Tinnitus, a step-by-step workbook. Today we'll be using the Changing Thoughts and Feelings worksheet and other exercises that you've been working on from the workbook. So let's begin.
Remember, the goals of tinnitus management are to reduce emotional reactions to tinnitus, to reduce your stress, to pay little or no attention to your tinnitus, to make sure that tinnitus does not interfere with any major life activities, and to get to the point where you no longer need or want further help for tinnitus management. Remember, too, that these goals can be reached even if the sound of your tinnitus doesn't change. The agenda for today is to review our previous work and to finish learning how to use the Changing Thoughts and Feelings worksheet.
During our previous video sessions, you learned several important things. One thing you learned is how to use the Changing Thoughts and Feelings worksheet. You also learned stress management tips and 2 relaxation exercises, deep breathing and imagery. Next, you learned how to plan pleasant activities to keep your mind off your tinnitus. And lastly, you learned to identify 12 common negative thought errors. Please take out the Changing Thoughts and Feelings worksheet that you already started to fill out from the last session. Take a moment to look over any progress that you made on the worksheet. If you don't have your worksheet from last time, you can take out a clean worksheet from the back of the workbook. So please pause the video and make sure you have the worksheet in front of you. On the worksheet, you should have already filled out the section on relaxation exercises and planning pleasant activities from session 2 of this video series. Today we're going to focus on the last of these skills, the changing thoughts skill.
First, let's review some important points about tinnitus management. The first point is that tinnitus is less likely to get your attention when you manage your stress and stay busy. If you are frustrated or stressed, your tinnitus may bother you more. If you are not busy with activities that you enjoy, again, your tinnitus may seem more bothersome to you. The second point we'd like to make is that you may not notice relaxation exercises helping you right away, but that doesn't mean they're not working for you. Keep practicing. You may be surprised to find how you begin to feel better overall, and how the more you practice, the less bothersome your tinnitus may be. The third point is to avoid practicing relaxation exercises in silence. Instead, use soothing sound or some sort of background sound during the relaxation exercises. Lastly, remember that increasing pleasant activities over weeks or months can help you get better at ignoring your tinnitus.
All of these exercises take practice. Today we're going to discuss the last skill of the Changing Thoughts and Feelings worksheet, changing thoughts. What is changing thoughts? Changing thoughts requires thinking about what thoughts you're having and then working to change any negative thoughts to something more helpful. During the last video session, we discussed how to identify negative thoughts or thought errors.
When you're doing this exercise, you will work step by step to figure out what your thoughts are and how to change negative thoughts to something more positive. You can do this anytime you're feeling stress or tension because of your tinnitus. Remember, your thoughts affect your feelings.
That's right. For example, imagine your dinner guests are late. Sometimes the way you feel about an event is caused by the thoughts about the event, not the event itself. If your dinner guests were late and you were concerned that they were in a car accident, you might be worried. However, if your guests were late and you thought, great, this gives me more time to clean up before they get here, then you're likely to feel better about that. So what you think affects how you feel. In this model, it shows the basic premise of changing thoughts and feelings. The premise is that there's an event, and then you have a thought about the event, and then you have feelings about your thought. For example, having tinnitus is an event. One's negative thought about that event may be, it will never end. That thought might lead to feeling frustrated.
Do you remember the CBT cycle that was discussed previously? As a review, the 3 different components of the CBT cycle are behaviors, beliefs and thoughts, and emotions. The reason this is important is that your feelings affect your health. Stress and negative emotions can lead to health problems. Too much exposure to stress hormones can cause the body to be less healthy. It is important to change your thoughts that cause negative feelings. Let's review the 12 most common thought errors. Thought errors are negative thoughts. They are not helpful and are unhealthy. Sometimes people get into the habit of having thoughts that make them feel bad. All people have thought errors from time to time. Thought errors make people feel sad or upset. A different thought might make them feel better. Often you can control your thoughts.
If you become aware of the common thought errors, then you can catch yourself and correct your thinking. However, before you can change your thoughts, you need to know what you were thinking. You should have practiced at home using the 12 common thought errors from the workbook and writing down your own examples of each of the thought errors.
Can you remember any of the 12 common thought errors? I'll give you one example. One of the errors is called jumping to conclusions. This is when you make assumptions even though you don't have facts to support them. You can review these common thought errors in your workbook. You may find that a negative thought can be categorized into more than one thought error from the list. In other words, you may be having a tough time deciding if your thought is labeling or underestimating. Well, it could be both. The categories often overlap.
This concludes our review of the common thought errors. We're now going to talk about how you can change your thoughts step by step. This new skill can be found in your workbook. It's called the Changing Thoughts exercise. We will describe each of these steps. Then we will give you examples of what someone wrote for each step. Finally, you will write on the exercise a personal example from your own experiences with tinnitus. You will pause the video between each step. We will tell you when to pause the video so that you can do this. The first step is to identify the event. This is the event that happened when you started feeling bad. What happened? Did you notice your tinnitus? Did your tinnitus keep you awake at night? Sometimes it's hard to remember the event that was happening just before you started feeling bad. If you have trouble remembering the event, then go to the second step and come back to step 1 later. Now, notice the example in your workbook on the Changing Thoughts exercise. See the example of step 1. This person wrote down the event that happened just before starting to feel bad. The event was, my tinnitus isn't getting any better. Now, we're going to ask you to do this on your own. Write down your own example in step 1 on the exercise. Pause the video until you have done so. Take your time with this exercise. And when you're done, restart the video.
Step 2 of the Changing Thoughts exercise is to identify the thoughts that you're having. In the last session, you learned how to do this. When an event happens, you have thoughts about that event. It's important to identify if one of those thoughts was negative or a thought error. Write down a thought that you had just before you started feeling bad. If you had more than one thought, pick the one that made you feel the worst. Let's look at step 2 using the example from your workbook. In this example, the first thought that came to this person's mind was, "Why can't anyone help me?" Now, try step 2 using your own example. What thought or thoughts did you have after the event happened that you wrote for step 1 on the exercise? Write this thought in step 2. Pause the video until you have a thought to write in step 2 of your exercise. And when you're done, restart the video.
In step 3 of changing thoughts, identify the feelings you were having just after the thought you had. Write down any bad or upsetting feelings that you were having. For example, sad or angry. These are the feelings that you have in response to the thought in step 2. Looking at the workbook example, this person reports feeling helpless, frustrated, and angry when they have the thought, "Why can't anyone help me?" Now, try step 3 using your own example. What feelings did you have after the thought you identified in step 2 on this exercise? Pause the video, write your feelings in step 3. When you're done, restart the video.
In step 4, you want to describe evidence for this thought. There's always a reason why we have thoughts, and perhaps your thought has some truth to it, but often they have many more errors. Write down what was true about the thought in the evidence for box on the step-by-step exercise. In the workbook example of the 4th step, this person identified evidence for the thought in step 2. The person wrote, "I've been to so many doctors and I still have tinnitus." Now try step 4 using your own example. What evidence do you have for the thought you identified in step 2? What is the evidence that your thought is true? Pause the video until you have written this in step 4. When you're done, restart the video.
In step 5, you will want to identify evidence against this thought. Examine the thought that you described in step 2. Identify evidence that this statement is not true. In the next box where it says evidence against, write down reasons why the thought may not be true. You may be able to identify this thought using the 12 thought errors from the list. You can have more than one thought error in a single thought. This is an example from the workbook of evidence against the thought, "Why can't anyone help me?" In this example, the evidence against that thought is, "I fell asleep easily last night. Maybe using sound is helping me even if the tinnitus isn't any quieter." Now, try step 5 using your own example. What evidence do you have against the thought you identified in step 2? Why is this thought not true? Pause the video until you have evidence against the thought to write in step 5. And when you're done, restart the video.
Step 6 is a new positive thought. In this step, you want to write down a new, more helpful thought about the event. This step may require a lot of patience and practice to feel more natural. Sometimes it helps to say statements that apply to many things. For example, some people call these mantras, such as, "I am healthy and happy, I am healthy and happy." That'd be a typical mantra that you could use as a positive thought in replacing negative thoughts. Importantly, the new positive thought should be brief, easy for you to remember, true to you, it should apply to your life, and be helpful. This is an example from the workbook of a new positive thought. The new thought is, I probably can't make my tinnitus quieter. Even so, I can find ways to feel better, even if the tinnitus doesn't change. Now try step 6 using your own example. Write a new positive thought in step 6. Take your time with this step. It is very important that the new thought helps you feel better than the negative thought you identified in step 2. Pause the video until you have written a new thought in step 6 of your exercise. And when you're done, restart the video.
Now, in step 7, please write down the feelings that you have when you think the new positive thought. As you think this new positive thought, pay attention to how you feel and notice your feelings change after you have this new positive thought. Let's look at step 7 using the example from the workbook. After having the new positive thought in step 6, this person felt happier and more confident. Now, try step 7 using your own example. What feelings do you have after having the new thought you wrote in step 6 on your example? Do you feel better? If not, you need to try again and come up with a different positive thought. Pause the video while you write down your feelings in step 7. When you're done, restart the video.
And the last step of changing thoughts is for you to picture yourself in the future. Look at the event and then look at the new positive thought. Think about a time in the future when you may experience that event again. Picture yourself having the new positive thought from step 6. This will help you to remember to think this thought instead of the negative thought when this event occurs again. This person pictures a time when he notices his tinnitus isn't getting any better. He then imagines having the more positive thought, I probably can't make my tinnitus quieter. Even so, I can find ways to feel better, even if the tinnitus doesn't change. Practicing this new thought will help him remember it in the future. Try this. Imagine the event happening in your own example for step 1. Practice the positive thought that you wrote in step 6. Pause the video while you practice step 8. And when you're done, restart the video.
So these are the 8 steps for changing thoughts. This could be pretty challenging. It's important to continue to practice and to track your progress. You can use the Changing Thoughts and Feelings worksheet to do this. Congratulations! Now you've learned all of the skills on the Changing Thoughts and Feelings worksheet. As a review, remember to use the step-by-step guide for changing thoughts that we just covered. Also, for each tinnitus problem situation, use the Changing Thoughts and Feelings worksheet to come up with a plan for managing your tinnitus. To make this plan, you can use up to 3 skills on the worksheet: relaxation exercises, planning pleasant activities, and changing thoughts. Use these skills to manage your tinnitus. Managing your tinnitus is an ongoing process, and learning these skills takes continued effort and practice.
Now I will summarize all the skills you learned in video sessions 2, 4, and 5. You learned how to manage your stress using relaxation exercises, deep breathing, and imagery. You learned how to plan pleasant activities to help you stay distracted from your tinnitus. Finally, you learned how to identify thoughts and to change your negative thoughts step by step.
Be sure to keep practicing. Use these skills along with the skills that you learned from the audiologist and continue to work on your sound plan and your Changing Thoughts and Feelings worksheets. Thank you so much for joining us. If you have any problems or questions regarding the content in these videos, please contact your audiologist or mental health provider.